most of us are more familiar with the service catalog component, and we can see the catalog illustrated through this full service lifecycle. So as we are developing the requirements, providing the definition, analysis, and approval, we are still considered to be part of the service pipeline. Once the service is approved for deployment, then it actually moves into the service catalog. The team is chartered, and then the design begins. Then we move through development, building and test, release, and then finally into service operation. Once a service is no longer required by the business, it can then be moved into the retired services component of the service portfolio. It is essential that we keep that record in the service portfolio for legacy users as well as for knowledge management. So we want to be sure that we understand what was done previously in order to provide better information for future decision making. So those were the phases and processes in service strategy. Once we've completed the service strategy phase, we should have an output which we call the service level requirements. So the service requirements package gets handed off to service design, where we actually design the services to meet the needs of the business and to incorporate all of the supporting components. So not just the technology architecture, but also the processes, metrics, and related documentation. From service design, we develop the service and have as an output our service design package, which gets handed off in turn to service transition. Service transition focuses primarily on change management, as the name implies. We are transitioning services into production. The approval of those service changes goes through change management. We also focus on asset and configuration management and all of the knowledge that we capture there about our infrastructure. Other processes include release and deployment management and knowledge management. Many of these processes, knowledge management in particular, are covered in a specific phase of the life cycle. Something to understand, though, is that although they may be covered or introduced in a particular phase of the life cycle, many of these processes actually span multiple phases of the life cycle. So we may start gathering knowledge about a specific service well into the service strategy phase of the life cycle. So even though we focus on knowledge management in service transition, and we do most of the information and knowledge gathering in service transition, it actually can begin much sooner. And we need to be sure that we have the appropriate structures or service management tools in place in order to capture that knowledge early on. Once we have completed the service transition phase of the life cycle, we should have as an output our service release package or approved service release package, which then gets deployed into production or operation. Operation is the phase of the life cycle where the business or customer sees the value in IT. IT here is focused on preserving a steady state of managed services. So we have a number of different processes that help us to manage these services on a day-to-day basis. Event, incident, problem management, as well as request fulfillment and access management. Service operation is also the phase of the life cycle where we introduce the functional areas or functions, including the service desk, the technical and application management teams, and IT operations. Out of service operations, we have as an output our service performance reports, which are inputs into continual service improvement. So as the name implies, we are focused here on improving services. We can do that by understanding what our baseline was, what our future, compared against the future state to see how we are doing, and then making judgments on corrective action from there. I mentioned earlier the Deming cycle. The Deming cycle are these 4 simple words: plan, do, check, act. And out of this Deming cycle, we develop the CSI model. The CSI model contains these steps. So we start with, what is the vision? That is our understanding our strategy. Once we understand the vision or strategy, we move on to understanding where we are now. So what is our baseline? We compare that against where we want to be, which is our target. And in order to know how to get to that target, we can develop improvement plans or service improvement plans. To judge our performance or to know whether we got there or not, we take a snapshot or look at overall metrics for our services. And then we need to keep the momentum going and start again from the beginning. So it's expected that once we develop a service and deploy it into the live environment, that it's not intended to be static. Business is changing at an ever-increasing rate. So we need to be able to adapt to those changes and to provide a response to the business more and more quickly. Some other concepts in continual service improvement include CSFS and KPIs. So if we are going to be able to take these, understand the performance and these metrics, we have to understand them in terms of what our critical success factors are and how that then relates to our key performance indicators. Our critical success factors are things that must happen in order for a service to succeed. So, for example, if we say that it's essential that IT services are protected when making changes, then we want to have a corresponding KPI that would look at, for example, the percentage reduction of unsuccessful changes or percentage reduction in changes that cause incidents. It's important to understand this because whatever we measure is going to drive the behavior of the organization. If we say, for example, that teamwork is a critical success factor, then we need to make sure that the KPIs that we publish do not focus on individual performance, because those types of KPIs will foster competition among the team. We should be choosing KPIs that are selected that are going to ensure that efficiency, effectiveness, and cost effectiveness are managed. These terms are found throughout the ITIL service lifecycle: efficiency, effectiveness, and cost effectiveness. To give you some examples of KPIs according to the various processes. So we talked in service strategy about financial management. In financial management, we may say that our CSF for financial management is to provide accurate financial reporting so that we can make sure that our IT activities are going to be properly funded. So if that is a critical success factor, then we want to be sure that we are accurately reporting the cost of delivering and supporting IT services. We need to be sure that we are accurately reporting what the overall cost is of delivering IT services. And we need to be sure that we have an accurate annual IT budget. For some of our other process areas, so for example, availability management. If we are focused on supporting our business services during critical time frames, so again, talking about a retail organization over Black Friday, we need to be measuring things like the number of services that are being monitored, how often are we seeing interruptions of service. And you'll notice with some of these KPIs, we want to indicate a direction. So what direction indicates success. So certainly we would want to see a decrease in service interruptions, a decrease in the duration of those interruptions, and we want to increase the overall service availability within our service level agreement limits or targets. Some measurements related to change management. If we are focused on implementing changes quickly and accurately. So I worked recently with an organization that was dealing with a lot of market pressure. There was a lot of competition in their industry. So they had to be able to make changes quickly but accurately to preserve the integrity of their services. So they want to make sure that they are not identifying unplanned or unauthorized changes, because that can cause disruption to service. They want to minimize the number of incidents caused by changes. Another measurement for changes being implemented quickly might include things like how long does a change take to go through the change process. So how long does it take before a change advisory board will approve a change, or how large is the change request backlog. Those types of measurements will help us to see. Those are KPIs related to our CSFs. We also want to minimize the number of emergency changes, because a high number of emergency changes is a risk factor for IT organizations. Release management. If we are focused on good release management, we want to make sure, again, similar to change management, we want to make sure we're being responsive to the organization. Testing is a key component of release management, testing and training as well. So we want to be sure that our releases are being implemented with adequate testing. We want to make sure that we are not having releases that fail or need to be rolled back. For the service desk and incident management, if we know, for example, that we've just acquired another organization, we may be looking at increasing call volume, and how do we handle that? Business value here is measured in minutes, so we want to be sure that we are resolving our incidents within our service targets. We want to make sure that even some of our qualitative measurements, like customer satisfaction, will go up. Problem management, very different from incident management in that for problem management, we want to not just resolve or restore the service quickly, we want to get to the root cause. So we want to make sure that we are capturing known error information. We want to be sure that we are not causing incidents through problems to the to services or to the infrastructure.